Daf Yomi, Tractate Sanhedrin, page 12b, top of the page. We were middle of the idea from 12a. So we'll start from Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Last couple lines there on the bottom. Last line or two. Rabbi Yehuda says, excuse me. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Ma'abrin Omer Rabbi Yehuda Masi Bechizkiya Melech Yehuda שעיבר את השנה מפני הטומאה וביקש רחמים על עצמו דכתיב כי מרבית העם רבת מאפרים ומנשה יששכר וזבולון לא יתארו. Rabbi Yehuda says the court may intercalate the year due to ritual impurity. Rabbi Yehuda said there was an incident involving Hezekiah, king of Judah, who intercalated the year due to ritual impurity. See 2 Chronicles chapter 30 verse 2. And after doing so, he requested compassion for himself, as it is written, for a multitude of the people, even many of Ephraim and Manasseh, Yisachar and Zebulun, had not cleansed themselves. Down on the top of 12b, with the words, Ki achlu et ha-pesach belo. Kakatuv, Ki hitpara'el Chizkiyahu aleihem lemor Hashem hatov yichaper ba'ad. Like we were saying, that when many were impure, from these various tribes, yet they ate the paschal lamb, not as is written, for Hezekiah had prayed for them, saying, May the good Lord pardon everyone who sets his heart to seek God, though he be not cleansed according to the purification that pertains to sacred items. See 2 Chronicles chapter 30, verses 18 and 19. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Mipnei ma hatuma ibruha, im mipnei hatuma ibruha, mi'uberes. אלא מפני מה ביקש רחמים על עצמו שאין מעברים אלא אדר והוא עיבר ניסן בניסן. רבי שמעון בן יהודה אומר משום רבי שמעון מפני שהשיא את ישראל לעשות פסח שני. Rabbi Shimon says, if the court intercalated the year due to ritual impurity, it is indeed intercalated, but if ritual impurity is ultimately a legitimate reason for intercalating the year, for what reason did Hezekiah request compassion for himself? Because the court may intercalate only the month of Adar, and he intercalated the month of Nisan during the month of Nisan itself. Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda says, in the name of Rabbi Shimon, the incident did not involve the intercalation of the year, rather he appealed for mercy because he encouraged the Jewish people to bypass the standard first Pesach, but instead to perform the second Pesach. Amar Mar, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Ma'abrin, Alma, Isle, Rabbi Yehuda, Tuma Dechoya, Hi Betzibur. Having quoted the Tosefta in its entirety, the Gemara now clarifies several of its details. The master said above, Rabbi Yehuda says, the court may intercalate the year due to ritual impurity in order to delay the paschal offering so that the people can perform them in a state of purity. Apparently, Rabbi Yehuda holds that the prohibition against performing the temple service in a state of ritual impurity is merely overridden in cases involving the public, although the offerings may be brought when most of the public is in a state of impurity. This course of action is not ideally permitted. One must attempt to find another way to perform the offerings in purity. V'hatanya tzitz ben sheyeshno al mitzcho ben she'eno al mitzcho martzeh divrei Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yehuda Omer odo al mitzcho martzeh Ein odo al mitzcho ein amarzeh. The Gemara asks, but isn't it taught in the Braita? The front plate, the front plate affects acceptance whether it is on the forehead of the high priest or whether it is not on the forehead of the high priest. This is the statement of Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yehuda says, as long as it is on the forehead, it affects acceptance. If it is no longer on his forehead, it does not affect acceptance. Amar lo Rabbi Shimon, Kohen Gadol b'Yom Kippurim, Yochiach, she'eno al mitzcho u'meratzeh. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Hanach Yom Kippurim Shetuma Hutra B'Tzibur. Rabbi Shimon said to Rabbi Yehuda, the case of high priest on Yom Kippur can prove that your statement is incorrect. As on Yom Kippur, the front plate is not on the forehead of the high priest during the time that he wears only linen garments, and it still affects acceptance. Rabbi Yehuda said to him, leave aside the case of the high priest on Yom Kippur, as since the temple service consists wholly of public offerings, the atonement of the front plate is unnecessary. Even without the front plate, performing the temple service in a state of impurity is permitted in cases involving public. If Rabbi Yehuda holds that it is readily permitted to perform the temple service in the instance of public impurity, then why would he sanction intercalating the year in order to give the public more time to become ritually pure? U'letameh tikshilach higufa Rabbi Yehuda Omer me'abrin ve'ela Rabbi Yehuda ma'aseh v'chizkiah melech Yehuda she'iber es hashana mipnei atuma u'vikesh rachamim al atzmo ela chasurim mechzer v'achigitani ein ma'abrin es hashana mipnei atuma v'im ibrua me'uberes Rabbi Yehuda Omer ein me'uberes v'am Rabbi Yehuda v'chulei. The Gemara rejects the question concerning the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, and according to your reasoning, the Tosefta itself should pose a difficulty for you. The Tosefta states, Rabbi Yehuda says, the court may intercalate the year due to impurity. And Rabbi Yehuda said there was an incident involving Hezekiah, king of Judah, who intercalated the year due to ritual impurity, and afterward he requested compassion for himself. Why would he request compassion after having made a legitimate decision? Rather, it must be concluded that the Tosefta is incomplete. And this is what it is teaching. The court does not intercalate the year due to impurity, but if the court intercalated it, it is intercalated. Rabbi Yehuda says even if the court intercalated it, it is not intercalated. And to prove his point, Rabbi Yehuda said that there was an incident involving Hezekiah who intercalated the year due to impurity and subsequently appealed for mercy. Yehachi Rabbi Shimon Omer im mipnei atuma ibrua meuberes haynu tane kame amerav lechatchila ikabenayu tanya nami hachi ein me'abrin es hashana mipnei atuma lechatchila Rabbi Shimon Omer me'abrin ela b'pnei ma bikesh chachamim atzmo she'en ma'abrin el adar v'hu iber Nisan ben Nisan. The Gemara asks if that is so, meaning that if this is correct way to understand the Tosefta, when the next statement in the Tosefta cannot be reconciled, Rabbi Shimon says, if they intercalated the year due to ritual impurity, it is indeed intercalated. According to this explanation, this is identical to the opinion of the first Tana, who also says that the intercalation is effective. Rava said the difference between these two opinions is whether the year may be intercalated due to impurity ab initio. According to the first Tana, although the intercalation is valid after the fact, impurity is not an appropriate reason to intercalate the year. Rabbi Shimon holds that it is an appropriate reason. This is also taught in a Braita. The court may not intercalate the year due to impurity ab initio. Rabbi Shimon says the court may intercalate the year due to impurity even ab initio, means l'chatchila. Rather, according to this opinion, for what reason did Hezekiah request compassion for himself? Because the court may intercalate only Adar, but he intercalated Nisan during Nisan. Okay? Amar Mar, she'im ma'abrin ela Adar, hui ben Nisan v'les le'e l'chizkiah chodesh hazelachem ze Nisan ve'en achar Nisan ta b'di Shmuel, the Amar Shmuel, ein ma'abrin es hashana b'yom shloshim shel Adar hoyel. The master said above, Hezekiah requested compassion because the court, when intercalating the year, may intercalate only Adar, and he intercalated Nisan during Nisan. How could Hezekiah act this way? But doesn't Hezekiah accept the following interpretive tradition? The verse states, this month shall be for you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year for you. Exodus 12, verse 2. This teaches that this month is Nisan, and another month cannot be Nisan. Therefore, the court cannot add another month of Nisan. The Gemara answers, Hezekiah erred with regard to the halacha that would later be expounded by Shmuel. As Shmuel says, the court may not intercalate the year on the 30th day of Adar, since although it is part of Adar, it is fit to establish it as the first day of Nisan, as the day that may be assigned as the new moon of Nisan. It has the same status as does Nisan, and the year may not be intercalated then. V'ihu savar hoyel v'ra'ui lo amrinan tanya nami hachi ein ma'avrin es hashana v'yom shloishim shalad hoyel v'ra'ui l'koy v'nisan. And Hezekiah held, we do not say the principle since it is fit, since it was technically still Adar. He initially thought it was permitted to intercalate the year on that day. The Gemara notes this opinion is also taught in a Braita. The court may not intercalate the year on the 30th day of Adar, since it is fit to establish it on the first day of Nisan. Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yeshua Rabbi Shimon, מפני שהסיית ישראל לעשות פסח שני, היכי דמי, אמר רבשי כגון שהיו ישראל מחצת טמאים, מחצת טהורים, ונשים משלימו את הטהורים ועוד אבויס עליהם. The Gemara further it analyzes the Sefta quoted above. Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda says the name of Rabbi Shimon. Hezekiah requested compassion because he encouraged the Jewish people to perform the second Pesach. What are the circumstances such that Hezekiah acted in this unusual manner and later regretted his decision? Rav Ashi said it was a case where half the Jewish people were impure and half were pure, and the women among them completed the ranks of the pure, and combined total then exceeded the impure ones. The majority of the men were impure, but as most of the women were pure, if they were included in the tally, the majority of the public was then pure. Hezekiah was unsure whether the women should be counted, as he was unsure if they are obligated to bring the paschal offering. Mikar savar nashim barishon chayva. Tehava muatin temeim umuatin midchul besachshein besoif savar nashim barishon rishus. Tehava luhu temeim ruba yuruba loy midchul besachsheni. Initially, he thought women have an obligation to participate in the first Pesach of the 14th of Nisan, so the majority of Jews are impure, and the minority should be deferred to the second Pesach. Therefore, he deferred most of the men, as they were ritually impure, to bypass the first Pesach. In the end, he thought women are permitted, but not obligated to participate in the first Pesach. So when counting only the men, the impure were the majority of those obligated to bring the offering, and the majority is not deferred to the second Pesach. And instead, they should have sacrificed the offering on the first Pesach despite their impurity. Consequently, having deferred the majority when they should not have been deferred, he regretted his decision. Okay. Gufa Omar Shmuel Ein Ma'abrin Es Hashana B'Yom Shloshim Shaladar Hoyel V'Ra'i L'Koy V'Nisan Ibrua Mai Amar Ula Ein Mekachin Es HaChodesh Kitshu Mai Amar Rava Ba'Tela Ibur Rav Nachman Omar Me'ubar U'Mekudash. With regard to the question of intercalating the year on the 13th of Adar, the Gemara discusses the matter itself. Shmuel says the court may not intercalate the year on the 30th day of Adar, although it is part of Adar, since it is fit to establish the day as the first of Nisan. If they intercalated the year on that day, after the fact, was the halacha, Ula says the intercalation is effective, and the court does not sanctify the month on that day, so that the intercalation will have been performed in Adar. The Gemara asks, if another court sanctified the month, was the halacha? Rava says the intercalation is void. As it turns out, that the intercalation was performed in Nisan. Rav Nachman disagrees and says the year is intercalated and the month is also sanctified because each court has performed an independently valid function. Amar le Rav Nachman mechte mipuri lePescha Tilatin yomin havi mipuri darshin mihilachas Pesach Titania shoyin mihilachas Pesach kodim lePesach 30 yom. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel omer shnei Shabbosos Chimat reish yalcha merachin lei asizaz b'chametz. Rava said to Rav Nachman, now from Purim to Passover is 30 days, and from the time of Purim we teach the community the halachot of Passover as it is taught in Braita. The people ask questions with regard to the halachot of Passover beginning 30 days before Passover. Okay. 30 days before Passover, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says they ask 2 weeks before Passover. If so, even during Adar, people know that Passover is approaching, and when the new moon comes, if the court will distance the Passover holiday another month by adding another Adar at so late a date, then the people will come to treat the Passover prohibitions of leavened bread lightly, believing that the stated time of Passover is incorrect because the sages decided the dates capriciously. Amar le mida yadi de shata me'bauta b'chushbana talya milsa amri chushbanahu de lo salik lehu l'rabanan hashtar. Rabbi Nachman said to Rav, the masses know that the intercalated year is a matter dependent upon the calculation, which is determined by a complex process. Therefore, they say, it is the calculation that did not conclusively emerge for the sages until now, and they will therefore understand when the true date of Passover is. Amar Rav Yehuda Mishmuel, Ema b'rinaz shana ela im kein ha'isa tekuva chasira ruba shin chodesh. Kama ruba shel chodesh, shisha asar yoim. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. With regard to intercalation on the basis of the season, Rabbi Yehuda says that Shmuel says the court intercalates the year only if the season of Tammuz, the summer, was lacking its completion for most of the month of Tishrei, meaning that the summer season had begun so late in the calendar that the autumnal equinox would occur only after most of the month of Tishrei had passed. Since the festival of Sukkot, beginning on the 15th of Tishrei, must fall after the autumnal equinox, a month is added to the previous year, therefore causing the summer season to end and the autumn to begin at an earlier point on the Jewish calendar. This allows Sukkot to begin after the autumnal equinox within the season of Tishrei. And how much is most of the month? 16 days. This is the statement of Rabbi Yehuda.